Look, you all know how much I love Bambu, as evidenced by my Team Bambu shirt, but this video, that's not what it's about. Here's 5 things Bambu got wrong. I talk a lot on this channel about Bambu printers and how great they are, and I do love how reliable these machines are, but more importantly, I love how easy they are to use. I firmly believe there's no other printer that prints this well, that is this easy to use, and has this level of reliability. Of course, there's an argument to be made for the cost of these printers, but that's a discussion for a different video. So for today, I've taken off my Team Bambu shirt, and we've switched to the Never Bambu shirt. Join me as I discuss the 5 things I really don't like about Bambu. I'm sure, unfortunately, you're gonna agree with me. Now let's begin with an oldie but goodie. This has kind of been in the news recently since the P1S just got refreshed to the P2S. But that doesn't fix what happened. The P1S screen was a major fail. If you remember, the X1 Carbon came on the scene offering everything that the 3D printing community wanted at the time. Input shaping, vibration compensation, AI print monitoring, super high-speed printing, and even still, it could print all the high-performance materials, and it had pre-tuned filament profiles right on the machine. Additionally, it had premium features such as a bright, beautiful touchscreen, along with other things like the AMS and stuff like that. So a lot of these features were things that people would add to their machines to upgrade them, but this machine did it straight out of the box. Well, you know what? Those features came at a price, and that was somewhere between $1,200 and $1,500 for the X1 Carbon, depending on the combo and the time of purchase. So a few months later, they released a budget printer based on that same skeleton. It was still Core XY, but it was stripped of most of the frills. This printer, the P1P, had a much simpler toolhead, no enclosure, and this terrible LCD screen. There are more differences, but the point here is the cost savings showed quite a bit. You could tell this was a much less refined machine. This wasn't really an issue if you ask me. The thing was made to be cheap, so concessions were made. I get that. What didn't make sense was putting this awful LCD screen on the P1S. This printer sort of stood in the gap between the P1P and the X1 Carbon. Again, the toolhead was a bit more basic, but most of the other features persisted. This one was more similar to the X1 Carbon in terms of features, but again, the cost savings were apparent, and the screen was the most apparent example of this. This thing sucks. The constant clicking through the menus to try and find basic functions is horrendous. Never mind trying to do anything AMS related with this sideways iPod Nano piece of garbage. I suppose my question with this cost savings decision was, why did it need to be such a drastic cost savings for the screen, the thing that you touch all the time? Could they have not put a super basic, but at least usable screen on there? At least for the P1S, since that one cost a little bit more? I don't know, it's not really an issue anymore because the P2S sort of fixed it, but what do you think? Was this acceptable for this long? I don't think so. So let's say you wanted to take that screen off your P1S and make a replacement for yourself. If Bambu wasn't such a walled garden and you could do things like that. Let's just imagine for a second. Well, if you were to use today's sponsor, PCB Way, I'm sure you'd be able to move that project right along. Let's play this out for a second. First, you'd need a PCB to run the thing. PCB Way can do that. It's in the name. But once you find a screen you want to use, how about an enclosure? PCB Way can print that enclosure out of anything from PLA all the way to titanium. And just like that, you have fixed the biggest issue with the Bambu P1S. The only knowledge you needed to possess to carry out this project was how to upload a 3D model, and generally how to design a PCB and hook it up to a touchscreen. You get what I mean. So check out the link in the description to see what other manufacturing solutions PCB Way can offer you, and finish some dang projects, why don't you? Moving right along, how about the build volume on the H2D? I know that was a bummer for a lot of people. I don't really think the build volume was that much of an issue, but you all commented quite a bit, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Some of you felt very strongly about the lackluster 325mm build space, and I get it to a degree. Initially, Bambu was setting quite a pace for releasing machines. By the end of 2023, Bambu was somewhere between 12 and 18 months into making printers. They'd not only released the X1 Carbon and the AMS to literally change the consumer market, they also released the P1P and the P1S printers, as well as the A1 and A1 Mini, and the AMS Lite. So in 18 months, you've got X1 Carbon and 4 other printers and a second AMS. That's kind of crazy for a brand new company if you think about it. But then they cooled off a little bit. Bambu took a break to develop something a little bit bigger. Now, there were leaks that led to speculation about things like dual nozzles and filament dryers inside the AMS, and more importantly, a bigger build volume. And with machines like the Creality Q2 and the Prusa XL kicking around now, surely we'd be looking at a printer with a build volume of at least 350 cubed, right? Right? By the end of 2024, the printer was delayed past the Christmas season that they were targeting. And we all had to wait a little bit longer for our large format Bambu machine. Until finally, early in the spring of 2025, we were given the H2D. That's where people started pointing out the lackluster build volume, and I kind of get it. The printer was 350 by 320 by 325, which is most assuredly not what the community was expecting. Sure, depending on what nozzle you used, you could reach different parts of the plate and all, but for my purposes, this is a 320 cubed machine. I'm not sure that I would call that large format exactly, but for me, this is enough. However, for a lot of you, this was unacceptable. After all that hype and all that buildup, we didn't even receive a 350 cube machine. What the heck, Bambu? Luckily, this was kind of rectified, but we can talk about that more on the next thing that Bambu majorly screwed up. So the next thing's lasers and vinyl plotters. What are we doing? Look, I've not been in the game that long, and I don't have as much experience as a lot of the people that you're probably watching on here. But for me personally, I don't care much for lasers. We review lasers from one company on this channel because we like their products, and that's it. That's Elegoo Laser, and you could look into their offerings because we actually approve of them. I'm serious, if I answered every email that offered me lasers, this would be a laser-only channel. I'm constantly rejecting lasers. Now, I understand there's a lot of people in the world that would love to play with a laser engraver, and that's great. That's what makes the world a great place. We're all different. We can like different things. But the lasers should probably just be lasers, and the printers, they should probably just be printers. Again, this is my opinion, but this is why I feel like the Bambu H2D multi-attachment head is a huge miss for Bambu. For starters, have you heard the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none? As much as I agree with that in this case, I will also defend Bambu a little bit. The H2D is riddled with sensors. They did a really good job of making sure the enclosure was laser ready. I mean, it's got sensors that can tell if this thing's on fire. That's pretty good. And then it can close off the doors and stuff to try and smother out the fire. It's super smart, and really I'm not surprised that Bambu was able to make an excellent laser for their machine, but again, my issue comes back to the fact that the laser is inside of a 3D printer. No matter how well they're implementing the tech, no matter how cool the exchangeable build plate things are, no matter how well supported the parts and materials are on their site, it doesn't matter. The laser compromises the printing experience, the printer compromises the laser experience. They're both great and even miles above comparable machines, but there's concessions made to achieve the functionality. Keo, what makes you say that? You've got 2 of these machines. What could make you think it's so compromised that it needs to make your list of things you don't like? I'm glad you asked. How about the fact that these different attachments all need to be developed and tested, which are things that take a lot of time and money? I think this printer could have come out a lot sooner if we weren't focusing on lasers. And maybe it wouldn't have cost so much to buy 2 of them if they didn't have to recoup the development cost of lasers and vinyl plotters. I think a cheaper H2D that came out on time, that's only a 3D printer, would have been much better than what we got. But instead, my wallet cries. Now let's rewind back to a time when the H2D wasn't a thing yet. Back when we only had leaks and speculation to go off of. I covered the earlier leaks based on this single picture and some patent drawings, and this little bit of information was enough to get the community talking. But as the actual release drew a little bit closer, the real leaks began. This new round of leaks gave us new information about the impending printer release in the form of this picture. Again, we're only looking at a single picture, but it conveniently had a lot of information packed in there. Almost as if Bambu wanted their printer to leak so we would all begin talking about it. This conveniently happened days before they began their campaign to announce the printer for real. You're not fooling me, Bambu. So one of the pieces of information on this leak was the fact that we were getting an upgraded AMS. In that picture, we could see AMS-HT specifically. Were we finally getting a filament dryer on board? This was something that needed to be addressed inside the Bambu line, so likely it was a surprise to no one. Now, of course, we've got the upgraded AMS, and yes, they have dryers built in, and that's great. The AMS has active venting to expel moisture that you cook out of your filament. There's sensors all over that allow the machine to more accurately monitor the conditions of the filament while it's drying. It's all very Bambu. You like that? Well, I did like the idea of it, but for some reason Bambu kind of screwed up massively with their implementation. First off, you know what I'm going to say, no drying while printing. This is a primary criticism of the system, whether you're trying to cook a waterlogged spool but don't want to wait until it's fully dry to begin the print, or you just want to make sure your very sensitive filament remains dry during a long print. The ability to run the dryer during a print is a given that none of us knew we would need to ask for. But let's add to this, not only can you not run the dryer during a print, it also recommends that you pull the filament out of the AMS inlets before it dries your PLA. That's right, why would you want to just load it up and dry it? Who wants to just push print after the dry cycle is completed? No, you have to wait for it to dry, go to the machine, manually feed all the filament back into the AMS. Then you can start the print. That's of course after you've opened the otherwise sealed box, thus ruining the relative humidity inside the system. Luckily, in a previous video, somebody commented explaining how it's only PLA that needs to be pulled from the inlet, but the point still stands. No drying while printing? Like, this doesn't make sense, right? I feel like this doesn't make sense. And to finally wrap this video up, the anti-consumer stuff. Recently, Bambu came out and said they're not letting third-party stuff have access to their printers anymore. You guys may be familiar with it. I'm surely familiar with it. And I'm not going to go too deep into it in this video. I will link the video where I initially spoke about it though. So if you want to learn more about that, that's number 5, Bambu's anti-consumer practices. Thanks for watching this video and everything on this channel. If you want to support what we do here at Kio Prints, you can check out our Patreon. We have a $2 a month subscription for a little bit of extra stuff and a discount at kioprints.com. Otherwise, if you want to get your Team Bambu or Never Bambu t-shirts, kioprints.com is the place to get it. Thanks to PCB Way for sponsoring this video. Thanks to you for watching this video. Tell me all the things you don't like about Bambu in the comments, because a lot of you already tell me anyway. Bye.